Caroline.
Mary, in the back.
Thanks, Caroline.
Glad to see you have a seat now.
I do. Thank you. Is the White House satisfied with Republican leadership's efforts on the Save America Act?
I think the president has made it very clear. He wants everyone on Capitol Hill to move to get the Save America Act passed, and he wants to see that legislation on his desk as soon as Republicans and Democrats can move to pass it.
But are there any lawmakers in Congress that the president is frustrated with on this matter and feels could be doing a better job?
I think the president wants to see everybody on Capitol Hill move faster all the time. That he wants everyone in this town to work at Trump speed like we do here at the White House. We'll go to Karen.
Caroline, two questions on Lebanon, if I can. Is the U.S. providing support at this point for Israel's ongoing offensive in Lebanon? And is the president concerned that right now there are more than 1 million people who've been displaced and potentially could be for a significant amount of time?
That's not something I'm in a position to comment on. For the first question. To the second question, of course, that's something that would concern the president. I think that's why he's again quickly moving to eliminate the threat of the Iranian regime in the Middle East, including weakening their proxies like Hezbollah, who have terrorized Lebanon for far too long. And I know that the president wants to see this, again, move as quickly as possible as we can over the course of the next couple of weeks here.
Kristen. Caroline, a question about the Strait of Hormuz. If these negotiations are not successful, is the only option to reopen the strait in boots on the ground, given that all of our allies have essentially said that they are unable or unwilling to help?
Look, that's a hypothetical question. It's a hypothetical question. It's also a decision that would have to be made by the commander-in-chief, and I'm not going to get ahead of him.
And in addition to that, when it comes to the Vice President, J.D. Vance, what has changed that has made him more of an active participant in these negotiations with Iran?
I don't think anything has changed. The Vice President has always been a key member, the President's right-hand man, and a key member of the President's national security team. He's been part of these discussions throughout this entire course of the administration with respect, again, to the 12-day war that the President and his national security team negotiated a solution to, with respect to the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza and the release of the hostages, which there was a lot of criticism that couldn't get done, and it did. The Vice President has been by the President's side every step of the way, and any reporting otherwise is just completely false. I see him in the room. Again, the President seeks his counsel on all matters, both foreign and domestic.
Can you just tell us who exactly the U.S. is negotiating with in Iran, and why the U.S. and this administration trusts that person?
Again, as I said to Gabe's question earlier, we're not going to get into the details of these negotiations and conversations that continue to take place. As, of course, you can imagine, they are very sensitive diplomatic discussions. And I would reiterate, I do recall giving all of you the same answer when we were negotiating the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. Gave you the same answer throughout the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. Gave you the same answer with respect to many of the other global conflicts that this administration has negotiated solutions to. President Trump is going to give his diplomats the freedom that they need to have these sensitive diplomatic discussions without negotiating and litigating them through the news media. Fran.
Just to follow up, though, because you said that some of the information that's been out there about the 15-point plan is inaccurate, can you say what is accurate with respect to ballistic missiles, the nuclear ambitions, and the Strait of Hormuz, which are things that the president has laid out that he wants to see a couple times in the past?
Look, if you've heard it from the President of the United States, obviously it's true, as well as the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. We've said repeatedly, I've said them from this podium, the Pentagon has reiterated them. That's why we've taken military action to achieve them. So, of course, those are goals that we want to see. But this full 15-point plan that's been floating around in many of your outlets, there's a lot of misinformation to that as well. And again, I would caution you from taking things from anonymous sources rather than verifying them directly with the White House. Christian.
Thanks, Caroline. Two on Iran. First, would the president consider loosening asylum restrictions for Iranians trying to flee the country right now?
Again, that's a question for the president. I won't get ahead of him on that. I haven't talked to him about that.
Okay. And then secondly, you mentioned at the top that Iran would be hit harder than they have been to this point if they don't recognize the fact that they're losing this war. Could those strikes happen before this 5-day negotiating window closes if the president doesn't think they're negotiating in good faith?
You're asking me to tell you if the commander-in-chief would authorize very strong strikes against the Iranian regime. That's not something I would ever reveal from this podium, true or not. Phil.
Here, in the back.
Thank you, Caroline. I was wondering if you would respond to some of this criticism of the administration from past allies like Joe Kent, who have said that the president's red line shifted from Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon to Iran cannot pursue nuclear enrichment. What is the administration's response to that criticism?
I think the president and I have both strongly responded to the criticism by Mr. Kent, who unfortunately resigned in disgrace and accused the president of basically being controlled by foreign countries and foreign manipulation, which is a ridiculous and laughable assertion. So his accusations have zero credibility as far as this White House is concerned.
The question of the red line shifting from no nuclear weapon to no nuclear enrichment, is there any substance to that argument?
I think the president has been quite clear in what he wants to see from the Iranian regime, which is why he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury in the first place. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a question for you on the SAVE Act, and I'd like to follow up on the DHS shutdown.
Sure.
First, Senator Mike
Save
Lee.
America Act.
Save America Act. The president corrected me yesterday. That was my fault. Senator Mike Lee said it's essentially impossible to pass the Save America Act through reconciliation. What's your reaction to that? Is the president worried that that strategy might fail?
I think he's willing to try all strategies. I spoke with him about this yesterday, and he said if we can make it work through reconciliation, let's absolutely do that. These, again, are common sense policies that are backed by the vast majority of voters across this country. The only people in this country who don't support them are politicians on Capitol Hill, and you all should ask them why they don't want voter ID, why they don't want proof of citizenship to vote in our nation's elections. Again, these are common sense proposals that are wildly popular, and the president is willing to use any means necessary to get this legislation passed and onto his desk.
And then on the DHS shutdown, do you expect deportations to decrease while ICE is in the airports? And what are the trade-offs of having ICE in the airports right now?
Well, to address this obviously short-term problem and the chaos that has been sowed by these Democrats on Capitol Hill, to address the lines and to get Americans traveling and get them to where they need to be. So the president, I think this was a creative solution, again, that was criticized, but we have seen wait times decrease, not as much as we'd like. Hopefully they will continue to, but at major airports over the course of the last few days as ICE has been facilitating with travelers in these airports. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. On March 6th, the president said in an interview with Reuters that the U.S. should have a role in choosing Iran's next leadership. Now that we're almost 4 weeks into the operation, is that still the president's assessment of where it should go?
As I've said repeatedly, I think the president obviously believes the United States wants to have someone in leadership position in the Iranian regime that will be much more favorable, that will be willing to work with the United States, that will no longer chant death to America. These would obviously be good common sense things for the United States and for our allies. I think that's what the president meant when he spoke with Reuters that day. Go ahead.
The president yesterday said that he had achieved regime change in Iran because the regime has changed. In terms of...
I mean, has it not?
Well, the leadership...
Their entire leadership has been killed, and nobody has really seen or legitimately heard from this alleged new leader. So wouldn't you say there's been a change in the regime?
There's been a change in leadership. I mean, do you feel as though...
There's been a change in the regime leadership, which is what the president said. So thank you for confirming he was right.
I mean, do you feel as though you've achieved leadership level or the personnel in place right now in Iran that you're satisfied with? I mean, have you...
I think it's too soon to say.
In terms of highly enriched uranium in Iran right now, is your expectation, I mean, the stated desire of the president has been to prevent nuclear weapons. Is your expectation that the end game here is that eventually Americans will be in possession of that uranium, or you'll somehow have some direct control over the highly enriched uranium that could be used to develop it?
Again, this is a point of conversation that continues. I think you know the means in which the United States would have to take in order to achieve that goal, and that's a decision for the president to make. Brian, good to see you, Brian Glenn.
Good to see you as well. Does the White House have a comment on a letter that was sent from Congressman Raskin to the DOJ alleging that the DOJ recklessly released damning information in regards to President Trump's documents.
Yes, I saw that letter from Congressman Raskin this morning, who I would add has zero credibility, and this letter was clearly a cheap political stunt. What the congressman did here, Brian, and for everyone in the room who's hopefully not reporting on this as fact, is that he took untrue and salacious claims in a memo that was produced by Jack Smith, who has been completely discredited for his lawfare and his witch hunts against this president, and that information was unverified. It never even made it into the indictment because it was so unverified. And what happened to that indictment anyway? It was thrown out. And Jack Smith has been proven, again, to be a prosecutor on a witch hunt against President Trump. He tried to throw him in jail ahead of the 2024 election. The Biden Department of Justice was fully on board with this lawfare campaign. And in fact, this story that was concocted by Congressman Raskin was so ridiculous. I understand his communications team reached out to some outlets in this room who responsibly said, we're not going to write this because this is just too much. However, of course, MS Now did write that story this morning because they continue to be left-wing propaganda for the Democrat Party. But I think Jack Smith has been proven to be a liar and a fraud. And this is, again, a cheap political stunt from a Democrat on Capitol Hill who I think wants to get himself on cable television. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon and welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. You were just watching the White House press secretary talking to reporters. And two questions I'll highlight and then we'll move on to our top story today. Caroline Leavitt saying that there is no timeline for now for the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has de facto closed. And then the second thing is that President Trump is open to all means to try to get the Save America Act passed. Okay, our top story. President Trump on Truth Social posted that he's so proud of ICE for the work they're doing at airports. He wrote, quote, "They're helping people with bags, even picking up and cleaning areas. They're so proud to be there." The president noted that ICE agents shouldn't have to do this work, but it was earning the appreciation of the American people. The stalemate that's led to a 6-week shutdown of the DHS is leaving lawmakers scrambling for solutions. Republicans making a new proposal not welcomed by Democratic leadership. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
This week on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are largely focused around negotiating a deal to end the DHS shutdown, as TSA workers and airports are feeling the brunt of the shutdown pain.
Abandoned, unvalued, forgotten, unimportant. It feels horrible.
Democrats have so far rejected the White House's proposals, which met most of Democrats' demands on changes to ICE policy.
We have made some progress, and the White House has already agreed to some steps. Bottom line, reforms must make it into law.
Sticking points remain over mask removal and judicial warrants. Republicans say that masks protect from doxing and judicial warrants would bog down immigration operations. After talks between the White House and senators have so far failed to make a breakthrough, Senate Republicans are looking to change strategy. On Tuesday, unveiling a new proposal to separate ICE funding from the DHS bill, a move that would allow Republicans to effectively bypass Democrats' reform demands.
If they want reforms, then they ought to figure out how to help fully fund ICE. ICE will be partially funded. CBP will be funded under this proposal.
Under this plan, Republicans would later fund ICE through a process that would allow passage on a simple majority, without any votes from Democrats. Democrat leadership yesterday rejecting Republicans' latest proposal, though it could pass if just 7 Democrats break ranks. The latest GOP proposal meeting with skepticism from House leadership.
That is not my preference. I can tell you the House has funded DHS twice. We're prepared to do it again, completely fund the entire department. That is the responsible way to do this thing. So we've been very resistant to any idea to break it apart.
President Trump expressing openness, but falling short of a total endorsement.
Well, I'm going to look at it, and we're going to take a good hard look at it. I want to support Republicans, and, you know, sometimes it's awfully hard to get.
The president previously insisted that any DHS funding deal include the Save America Act, a bill to mandate photo ID for voting and proof of citizenship to register to vote. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Record wait times at airports, uncertainty during the World Cup, and higher security risks. A House hearing is looking into the impacts of the ongoing DHS shutdown. Here's the acting TSA administrator.
We have already lost over 480 TSOs this shutdown, and our call-out rates have accelerated as our workforce was still reeling from the last shutdown. Prior to this shutdown, our TSO call-out rate was 4%. Now, multiple major airports are experiencing days where 40 to 50% of their staff are calling out because they simply cannot afford to report to work. This has led to the highest wait times in TSA history, with some wait times greater than 4.5 hours.
The TSA acting administrator says the funding lapse has forced 95%, or over 61,000 TSA agents, to continue working without pay. She says many of them are struggling to pay bills and taking second jobs, as you just heard. She also fears the shutdown will cause the agency to lose experienced workers to other jobs and reduce the number of interested candidates. She says this means the TSA is likely not able to train enough new officers in time for the World Cup. Top officials from FEMA, CISA, and the U.S. Coast Guard also testifying. They say the DHS shutdown is undermining FEMA's ability to provide disaster relief, CISA's ability to detect national security threats, and the Coast Guard's ability to defend the coast. They're urging Congress to pass funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
Cuba is in economic and social turmoil. This linked to shortage of fuel. And this is amid severe blackouts and protests as well. We discussed the situation with an economist after this break. Don't go away.
Absolutely perfection.
Hands down, the best show I've ever seen.
I almost cried like 8 times.
I don't think anybody realizes how good this show is until you actually get into the theater and see it.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
It fills the cup with joy.
Could not get enough of it.
You have to come see it. It's a must-see. Must-see.
Returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Get your tickets at shenyun.com.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options, only at selectspecs.com.
Hi, my name is Brady. When I was born, my parents thought everything was okay. My mom and dad were so excited to take me home.
I still get goosebumps telling this story. Several days in, his skin started to become very cold and clammy. We noticed that he had become blue around his mouth, and something was just very off.
We packed up as fast as we could. Brady stopped breathing twice on the way to the pediatrician. And that was one of the #1 things that just haunts me to this day.
I was born with a congenital heart defect called aortic coarctation. If my parents waited just 1 more hour to drive me to the hospital, I would not be here today. But thanks to research funded by the American Heart Association, I had heart surgery that saved my life. But not every kid is as lucky as me, which is why we need your help. Just call the number on the screen or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help. Get people trained in CPR. Get more hospitals certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. And help fund the next medical breakthroughs to help save kids like me.
When you donate to the American Heart Association, you're helping save lives like my son. And now my son is happy and healthy, thanks to the support of people like you.
When you call with your $19 a month, you'll get this really cool t-shirt as a thank you. Many children die from congenital heart defects. I can't wait to grow up to become a heart surgeon and fix babies' hearts, but until then, I'll keep helping the American Heart Association. So please join me. Just call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org to become a monthly donor and help save lives.
Venezuela is preparing to send a diplomatic mission to the United States. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez meeting with her delegation this week. The Venezuelan diplomats are being tasked with rebuilding communication channels with Washington. They'll also be working to enhance Venezuela's international standing and promote agreements in key sectors, including energy, trade, and investment. And multiple outlets report that Venezuela also plans to reopen its embassy in the U.S. And in other Venezuela-related news, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is calling for more transparency on contract and security in Venezuela's oil sector. According to Machado, America's supervision of oil revenue is needed to prevent corruption and wrongdoing. Now, to talk about the situation inside Cuba, joining us is Daniel Lacalle, chief economist at Tressis Hedge Fund, international financial analyst, and author of the book Freedom or Equality. Daniel, good afternoon to you. So, as you're already aware, the country, Cuba, is in deep economic and social turmoil, driven by fuel shortages linked to certain aspects. Let me just get your first reaction to the latest news here that U.S. suppliers have shipped approximately 30,000 barrels of fuel to Cuba's private sector. So the emphasis here on private sector. I mean, in your view, does this suggest a plan to give private business a leg up over state-run enterprise? Possibly. Your reactions here.
Hi, Don. Absolutely. I think it's very important for a very simple reason. Anyone that understands what is happening with the dictatorship in Cuba knows that the dictatorship resells and steals the dollars that they receive from those sales of foreign oil and also domestic oil. They have been squandering billions of dollars from the internal production, which is around 32,000 barrels a day, but also from all the oil that they got for free from Venezuela and from Mexico. So it's absolutely critical that the United States, which is already the largest trading partner of Cuba in terms of medicine, in terms of chicken, in terms of food and health products, all these things, gives the private sector, with the very small private sector, but the important private sector, the fuel that the dictatorship is using to play victim, because the dictatorship is basically at the same time providing ample fuel, internet, and electricity to the flotilla that has gone to Cuba to promote the propaganda of the Cuba dictatorship that uses poverty as a way to play victim.
So, Daniel, I saw your article titled "Cuba Sank Because of Its Repressive Regime, Not Because of an External Blockade." Just talk to us a bit more about your article. I mean, what would happen if restrictions were lifted, U.S. restrictions lifted entirely tomorrow? What would happen to Cuba?
But let's start from the perspective that the Cuba economy was already in a completely disastrous situation before there was any sanction. That the sanctions are against the leaders of the dictatorship that squander and steal the money that they receive from exports. More importantly, what has happened in Cuba is very, very simple. The dictatorship uses poverty as a way to play victim. Cuba is the most subsidized economy in the world. It receives billions from Russia, from China, from Mexico, from the European Union countries. It has more than 27 trade agreements and bilateral agreements with the largest economies in the world. The EU countries have eliminated their debt and forgiven their debt commitments in numerous occasions. And what the Cuba dictatorship does all the time is to impoverish citizens so that they can squander even more money. So What is exceedingly important is that the regime is eliminated so that those sanctions don't need to exist, and more importantly, that at the same time, the Cuban people start to see the benefits of tourism, of trade, of industry, and all the elements that they deserve. It's incredible that people are saying that the problems of Cuba are due to the sanctions when the government has banned the import of medicine and food into the country. All these things need to be told over and over again because the propaganda of the dictatorship has always been the same in the past 60 years. The Cuba economy sank decades ago, and I'm talking decades. It has been demolition of industry, of the trading sector, of everything that has to do with the industry and everything that has to do with manufacturing. And it survives due to the entry of capital for tourism that they allow in order to maintain the dictatorship's situation. And this is obviously something that needs to change, and the United States plays a key role here.
Right, as you said, this goes back decades. It didn't happen overnight just because the U.S. Put restrictions on the oil. And if the U.S. lifted the restrictions and the government stays the same, potentially nothing would change, possibly. So, I mean,
exactly.
Talk to us. Yeah. So talk to us. You said this goes back decades. Maybe you can highlight some of the specific policies of the Cuban regime or actions throughout the years that has led to the current economic situation.
Okay, number one, they completely abolished private property, and they demolished anything that had to do with private businesses with policies as well, that every time that they allowed a little bit of the private sector to do something, immediately they would steal it and eliminate it again a few years after. So it's a constant process of erosion, creating a dependent and hostage subclass within the country that at the same time, the dictatorship has been using repression and propaganda and not allowing the citizens to leave the country. So it uses citizens as hostages. Since 1960, the Cuba economy was one of those that had all of the opportunities. It was a thriving economy, etc. And what we have seen since the arrival of the Cuba Castro regime, what we saw was first the demolition of the industry, second the demolition of manufacturing and trade, the obliteration of anything that had to do with a private, entrepreneurship and initiative. And finally, the other element that has been absolutely destructive has been this constant use of subsidies to maintain itself as a victim. I come back to the point. When the Soviet Union existed, it gave billions of dollars to the Cuba regime. The Cuba regime used it on the one hand to use a lot of that money to promote the dictatorship and to promote communism all over the world, and on the other hand, to enrich the leaders of the dictatorship. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia, China, the European Union, many other economies continued to support Cuba under the impression that that would be something that would put the economy back on its feet. However, what the dictatorship has been doing over and over again has been to generate a system which is equivalent to a kleptocracy. They consistently absorb any type of wealth and any type of economic growth or richness that comes to the island, and then uses repression and propaganda to continue maintaining this repressive regime that I come back to the point. It was already in an absolutely disastrous economic situation way before there were any sanctions from the United States.
Okay, so Daniel, I'm not an expert on this, but what you said just now, does that lead to the inflation situation in Cuba?
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, how did inflation in Cuba get so severe?
Well, we have seen it in Venezuela. We have seen it in Iran. What does the Cuba dictatorship do? It's very simple. They steal the dollars that they receive from exports. They squander the money that they receive from subsidies. And then they print a currency that nobody demands in the island. So on the one hand, they maintain a certain level of reserves from the enormous amount of funds that people that have fled the island are sending to their families in Cuba, but at the same time, to continue paying the alleged subsidies and the things that they pay in the local currency, they print more and more of their own currency, leading to hyperinflation, because money supply growth is brutal, but at the same time, the reserve entry is very, very limited. And I think that is the key factor. The key factor is that what the Cuba regime does, similar to what the Venezuelan regime did or the Iranian regime did, is to maintain the idea of a very aggressive level of spending from the government, because they are doing it in a currency that is completely worthless. So to the extent that you can actually travel around Cuba and see the currency in the floor and nobody picks it up.
Yeah, I've seen images online of how much money you need just to go to the grocery store. It's crazy there. Yeah, this is very interesting discussion. There's another aspect that you mentioned in your article I want to touch on. You say the Cuban healthcare system is failing. So talk to us about this specifically. What's wrong with it? Why is it failing?
Okay, the propaganda of the regime says over and over that Cuba has the best and most open healthcare system in the world, that they have universal healthcare and that everybody has the best healthcare in the world, and that they export doctors. It is a complete fallacy. It's pure propaganda. What they do is that they have a healthcare system that is limited to the elite that are close to the dictatorship and the Communist Party and foreigners, but the healthcare that the average citizen receives is derelict, completely abandoned. And it's not only completely abandoned, but the little inflow of medicines that comes from the United States gets immediately absorbed by the dictatorship in order to provide to the people that are close to the government. But the average citizen has no possibility, to the point that one of the largest elements of imports that were coming to Cuba before it was banned was medicines, is that citizens that had escaped the islands would send to their friends and family the medicines that they could from the United States or from other countries. So it's basically a facade. They have a healthcare system that tells you and the world that is universal, but it's actually not universal. It's an absolutely demolished healthcare system that is available only in quality to the elite and the foreigners.
So, Daniel, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just have two more questions here. President Trump previously said Cuba is going to fail. In your view, is the Cuban regime close to collapsing, or is it not close to collapsing?
The Cuban regime has collapsed many years ago. The only thing that happens is that the dictatorship stays in power through a combination of repression and constant use of these methods of propaganda and victimization. So the economy is absolutely obliterated. Many years ago, I wrote an article, Don't Forget Cuba, in 2018. It was already destroyed. No, so President Trump is absolutely right. But the problem is the regime. The problem is that there is a group of people that are making themselves multimillionaires by stealing the little amount of money that is coming from the subsidies from Russia, from China, or from the European Union.
Okay, just one final thing. How do you have a different regime? How would a regime change work, hypothetically speaking, of course, because the Communist Party remains the only legal party in Cuba, right? There's no official opposition group. And just if you could really quickly, after you talk about that, just real quick, what lessons can be learned from Cuba about centralized, controlled or planned economies?
How do you change the regime? First, the opposition is well organized, but you need to have a process just like what we're seeing right now in Venezuela. So it needs to be a monitored and doctored process in order to come back to democracy. So that's the way in which you do it. What are the lessons? The lessons is that every time that you allow communism as an experiment, it stays for decades, even if it fails completely, as we have seen in Cuba. And the lesson from Cuba is that socialism never works, even if it gets billions in subsidies and free oil.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true. Even if it fails, communism, it stays for decades. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Daniel.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Coming up, Unbroken, the untold story of Shen Yun, premiering last night. A look into the documentary about how Shen Yun dancers face intimidation for telling the true story of Chinese culture. Stay with us.
Are you sitting at home living in pain? Maybe it's in your hands, maybe your back or your hips. The good news is you don't need to live in pain. Why? Because there is Omega XL, a one-of-a-kind, natural, powerful joint relief supplement created from the green lip mussels of New Zealand. Drug-free, non-habit forming. It's small, easy to swallow, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research. If you're experiencing daily aches and pains due to aging and overuse, try Omega XL. Just ask anybody who uses it. The results are undeniable.
I had a lot of joint pain, and that slowed me down.
I had considerable pain in my back.
Really felt the pain. I mean, in my ankles and in my heels.
I'm telling you about something that's gonna change your life. It has revived me.
This works.
I'm not a prisoner anymore to my pain.
As I was getting older, my joints started to feel that wear and tear. But then I tried Omega XL, and it changed my life. Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL. And look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years. And Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great. If you're in pain, I want you to know that there is real hope out there. I'm living proof. See the difference it can make in your life, just like it did in mine.
Call now or order online to receive our special TV offer. Buy one bottle of Omega XL and get a second free. Plus, we'll also include a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. 2 free bottles for the price of 1 bottle of Omega XL. A total value of $115. You pay only $49.95 and it ships free. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee. Buy one, get 2 free. Call or go online right now.
Introducing the QuestWise Soothing Herbal Eye Patches. It comes with 30 pairs and can be used to help combat tired and strained eyes. The natural herbal formula provides a cooling, minty, and refreshing effect that stimulates natural tears and awakens your tired eyes. Placing the eye patches around your eyes helps to reduce dryness and massages acupuncture points. They can be worn while reading, studying, using electronics, and provide hours of long-lasting relief.
Elmo's daddy taught him that when he has a big feeling like being frustrated, humming a song can help you feel better. Love your mind.
A newly released documentary follows a world-renowned Chinese classical dance company as it rises to global acclaim while facing threats and intimidation. Shen Yun Performing Arts telling their side of the story with the film premiere of Unbroken. NTD's Arlene Richards was there. Let's take a look.
For 20 years, a Chinese-American dance company has faced intimidation, from cut bus tires to death threats to a coordinated campaign linked to the Chinese Communist Party. But on Tuesday night, the performers had an opportunity to tell their side of the story in the film premiere of Unbroken. Shen Yun performing arts artists and principals, along with filmmakers and invited guests, attending the New York red carpet premiere screening of Unbroken, the untold story of Shen Yun. In 2006, a group of classical Chinese artists came together in New York with a mission to revive the traditional divinely inspired culture of China from a time before communism and share it with the world. Since then, rigorous artistic training and spiritual conviction have shaped both their craft and their character.
I think everyone sees Shen Yun as a perfect show or like a flawless show, and that's what we try and make it. But I hope that they can see that behind that it's actually just a lot of human people.
Despite their rise to global acclaim, the group has faced constant intimidation and threats of violence.
Well, I think what we're seeing now is all coming to a head. The attacks at Shen Yun and Falun Gong more broadly in America are facing the last 2-3 years. It's coming at us from the bomb threats, obviously, the spies, obviously, but also disinformation through the most trusted news sources, supposedly, in quotation marks.
Here they're trying to do something fantastic, something that's bringing light and hope to the world, and you've got a foreign power coming in and trying to sabotage it and silence it.
NTD's Steve Lance investigates performers' accounts of threats and other interference linked to the Chinese Communist Party. The New York Times prepared a series of articles against Shen Yun over a 6-month period. In one article, it accused the company of denying medical treatment to dancers when they are injured.
We looked into their reporting and we saw so many flaws in it. And we've decided that, it's time to give Shen Yun a voice and hear their side of the story, because much of the New York Times reporting failed to include information that was given to them from Shen Yun.
Despite the obstacles along the way, the dance company has thrived.
Shen Yun, to me personally, is a story of hope. It's a company that brings hope and goodness and optimism to the world. It's a story of courage. It's a story of doing what's right.
Shen Yun, I feel like I can't separate myself from Shen Yun. It's made me who I am, basically. It's taught me the traditional characteristics of Chinese culture. Before, I was someone that didn't really like Chinese culture, even though I am Chinese. But now I appreciate it and I spread it to everybody else in the world.
When artists risk everything to preserve truth, faith, and tradition, the human spirit is unbreakable.
I loved actually hearing the story and seeing how everything unfolded. I think it's a very powerful documentary. I highly recommend for people everywhere to go and see it to better understand what's happening.
The film really shows American values. The family that was depicted in Unbroken really encaptured the values of courage, grit, and love.
This is a very special film, and it's very relevant to the times, and I think it'll educate people about what's happening in the world, in addition to, the beautiful dancers of Shen Yun.
I'm Arlene Richards reporting from the Lincoln Square AMC in New York City.
Are digital IDs the future, or a gateway to a social credit system? And with AI transforming how we're identified, one expert is warning of the risks. We talk more after this break. Stay with us.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you, as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
It's a magical painting.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Are digital IDs the future? Could they lead to a Chinese-style social credit system? And how is AI impacting identification? Joining us now is a woman sounding the alarm on the issue, Reggie Littlejohn, founder and president of Anti-Globalist International and Women's Rights Without Frontiers. She is also the co-founder of the Sovereignty Coalition, a nonpartisan organization focused on national sovereignty and medical freedom. Reggie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, because you recently spoke before the European Parliament about the danger of digital IDs. So first off, just so that we're on the same page, for digital IDs, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about like a virtual version of, for example, a driver's license on your phone, or of that nature? What are we talking about here?
So that's a good question because they come in all different forms, okay? A digital ID is just basically an interoperable international ID. It can come as a health ID. It can be just a regular, they could call it a digital ID. It can be part of a digital wallet. It can be a digital driver's license. Anything that is mandatory and that is digital and that that can live it like as an app on your phone, it is a digital ID.
So it's not exactly a photo of your physical ID. It's entirely digital from the beginning. There's no physical copy.
There can be a physical copy, but the physical copy would have to be tied to biometrics. That's the other thing that's really important about the digital ID, is that there's a biometric aspect to it.
Okay, so tell us where the world is at then with implementing digital IDs, because for Europe, as I understand it, has progressed much further down the road compared to the United States?
So one of the main forces pushing the digital ID is the World Health Organization. And in June of 2023, Tedros Ghebreyesus, the head of the World Health Organization, announced that they were rolling out these interoperable international digital IDs to help with keeping track of people's, basically their vaccination status and other health issues. But what this digital ID, and this has been implemented throughout Europe, it's been implemented in other countries as well. But the danger of it is that when you have interoperable international digital IDs, first of all, if they're interoperable and international, the information on them can be accessed by other countries, such as, for example, China, okay? And then when you combine these IDs and you set them up the way the World Economic Forum they have a chart about what they would consider to be a full-blown digital ID, that these IDs we use to access healthcare, set up bank accounts, travel, vote, file your taxes, have a, even own a communications device such as a cell phone or a laptop, and then also to monitor smart cities. So if a digital ID is used to access all of these things, then it can also be used to deny access to all of these things. And what I'm concerned about is that we are setting up a worldwide system similar to the China social credit system.
So what does that mean for me, for example? If I'm going about my day-to-day life, how does it matter to an everyday American?
Well, you're not an everyday American, okay? Okay, and I'm not either in this sense. The digital IDs in China, the China social credit system, will track your social media posts, your internet search history, your internet spending history, and they will come up with a profile of you, a number that says whether you are a trustworthy citizen or not. Now, a trustworthy citizen in China would be somebody who does everything that they're told and never criticizes the government, which is why I would say that you and I would not be considered ordinary citizens in China, because we have said things that criticize the Chinese Communist Party. So what happens then in China if you do that? There are levels of punishment. First level of punishment is you could lose your job. You could not be able to borrow money, so you can't buy a home. You can't start a business. Your kid won't be able to go to a private school. Next level of punishment is they can cut you off from your credit card and your bank account, like what happened to the Canadian truckers who were opposing vaccine mandates. And final level of punishment in China is they can just disappear you. So the way that this would matter to an ordinary citizen is it can be used in the United States or anywhere else. If we implement these, it can be used the government could use them in the wrong hands to silence opposition. So this is not a left-right issue. The left can use it to silence conservative opposition. The right could use it to silence, progressive opposition. And what that means is that it's going to be the death of dissent. And that's what I called my talk at the European Parliament, digital IDs and the death of dissent. Whoever's in power, you will not be able to dissent. And this is the end of democracy also.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a strong point. This should be a nonpartisan issue, right? And that leads to my next point here. You were talking about things that could happen within China. So I wanted to ask you how you became connected with this issue. I understand you started out working to stop forced abortions in China, right, under its communist regimes. And through this, you became aware of the regime's mass digital surveillance of its citizens and how this is allowed to control the populace, as you just mentioned just now. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us about your journey here.
Oh, well, I'm an attorney, and in the 90s, I represented a couple of refugees who were victims of the one-child policy, one was a victim of forced sterilization, the other of the forced abortion policy. And I left the practice of law and established Women's Rights Without Frontiers. And our first goal was to end forced abortion in China. And we've since expanded to saving baby girls who are at risk of gendercide, saving abandoned widows. But I've been an extreme critic of some of the human rights atrocities by the Chinese Communist Party, including I was one of the first critics of how they were treating the Falun Gong and persecuting the Falun Gong. But when COVID hit, I saw the outsized influence of the Chinese Communist Party on the World Health Organization and the way that the World Health Organization was basically adopting the China model, vaccine mandates, mask mandates, lockdowns, and also they were sort of pushing something that they called vaccine passports. So I co-founded something called the Stop Vaccine Passports Task Force. I believe that we succeeded in making that nomenclature radioactive, so they just started calling it digital health IDs, but they have continued to roll these things out under the pretext of keeping us safe for our health. But there are other pretexts like stopping illegal immigration would be another pretext. Another pretext would be helping young people, making sure that people are of a certain age to view, like age verification. Anything like that requires digital IDs and can be turned into a Chinese-style social credit system. So we need to resist it.
So you mentioned earlier that the WHO is a significant force behind this, and I mentioned earlier you spoke before the European Parliament about the dangers of this. What were the specific issues that you've raised before the Parliament?
One issue that I really want to mention here is how digital IDs can work with central bank digital currencies, or in the United States with any digital currency that is programmable. So this is a concern also about stable coins, which the United States is, I believe, developing. So what I mean by programmable money is that any money that is digital is something that can be controlled to the nth degree. So if you use cash, for example, and no one knows what you paid for, who you paid, when you paid it, it's anonymous. Whereas with a central bank digital currency or a stable coin, anything is programmable. Either the central bank or a commercial bank will know who's trying to buy what, when, and how much it's going to cost, and they can control it. They can say, you can't buy that. So let's say that they decide, let's say we have carbon credits, which some sectors of the world are pushing for. And let's say that you have already flown for a wedding in your family that year. And let's say that they're clamping down on carbon, and then let's say that a loved one dies. They'll say, well, you already used up your carbon credit. You can't buy that second ticket. Or let's say you refuse to be vaccinated or get the 5th booster or whatever it is. They could say, all right, you need to be quarantined. And therefore, your central bank digital currency or your stablecoin will not work outside of your house. So you will not be able to go and get gas. You will not be able to go and get groceries. This is a very, very powerful way to control people.
Okay, so how far away are we from this future? What do you say to those who just brush this off as alarmism?
For people who want to brush this off as alarmism, I challenge you. Go online and just look it up. Just look up how far are we along in the world to implementing digital IDs. Can digital IDs form the basis of a central bank, of a Chinese-style social credit system? Just read the information. Spend an hour of your life just reading the information, and that will convince you that what I say is true.
And what about artificial intelligence? Because that's been, it's been an explosion of recently. What impact will that have of artificial intelligence on our forms of systems of identification?
This entire system is run on artificial intelligence. That's how it's run in China. They have AI, they have surveillance cameras everywhere, and everything that you do digitally, so whether you purchase something or whether you do an internet search or whatever it is, if it's done in the digital world, AI is picking it up and coming out with this social credit score. So it can't be done without AI, and it's done through AI. And what's very concerning to me is the way that in the United States and all over the world, they are building these massive AI data centers. And these things can be as big as college campuses or bigger. And they are building these things in order to have the capacity for AI to surveil us. And then also, one of the big tech giants in the United States, Larry Ellison, the head of Oracle, has shown what his view is of how AI should be used. That we will all be wearing surveillance cameras on our bodies, body cams at all times. There will be, ring cameras on the doors, surveillance cameras on corners, surveillance cameras on cars, so that everything we say and everything we do will be uploaded into AI, so that to keep us safe. So that so this will help with that there won't be police brutality or citizens like mall shootings. There won't be more mall shootings because AI would pick up an escalation and send in drones to break it up because the drones are faster than police. I mean, this is like 1984 on steroids. And what it does, like I said, it's the death of dissent, because whoever you have in power, if you are saying things, even if you're having a conversation in the privacy, the supposed privacy of your own home, and you are saying things that criticize the government, they can mark you as an untrustworthy person and start to manipulate you and control you, and ultimately to just completely cancel you on the basis of your beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very scary future. But just one last question here, because we're a little bit short on time. Just over the decades, throughout all your causes here, the common thread running through all of them is a deep belief in the innate sovereignty and dignity of each human being. So can I just ask you finally, why is this so important to you?
This is so important to me because I believe that we have God-given rights, that we have, and central to that is free will. That is something that God gave us, and that is something that they are trying to control through AI, right. and just to completely, it's completely dehumanizing, and that's a reason that one reason that we really need to resist it.
Yeah, and no matter how sophisticated AI gets, in my opinion, it simply cannot replace the human element to whatever it is trying to replace. Well, Reggie, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. All right, we'll be taking a short break. A verdict has been reached in the landmark Los Angeles trial over claims social media platforms are dangerously addictive for children. The decision, read this morning, could have major implications for the tech industry. Stay with us for more in just a moment.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder, rooted in